Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's your boy Beaky, and let's talk about one of the most interesting topics that I found on Reddit r/DNDNext. Let's get right into it. What are things you recently learned about Dungeons and Dragons 5e that blew your mind, even though you've been playing for a while already? This comes from our user today. Let's get into the post. This kind of happens semi-regularly for me, but to give you the most recent example, medium dwarves, we recently had a situation at my table where our rogue wanted to use a homebrew grappling hook to pull our dwarf paladin out of danger. The hook could only pull creatures small or smaller. I had already said sure, that works, when one player spoke up and asked, aren't dwarves medium size? We all lost our minds after confirming that they indeed were, and medium dwarves is now a running joke at our tables. As for the situation, I left it to our paladin and they confirmed they were too large. So before we go into the comments section and see what other people thought about this story, let's give you my view and tell you about some stuff I recently learned, or at a table my players recently learned. Well, first of all, it was a fun story. If you think about the trope for dwarves in the fantasy movies and novels, many of them portray dwarves as very small, could be considered small creatures. But in the Dungeons and Dragons world, dwarves are considered medium-sized creatures, about the same class range as, well, humans. And with that, they might be around, shoulder height or a little lower than humans, but they still give off a medium-sized creature. That's why they're able to use big pole arms without having the disadvantage of having a big old long lance, and they're not a small creature. If you know the rules for small creatures, they get disadvantage while holding those heavy weapons, but medium sized and larger have no problems with that without taking feats. So for me, this is just a crazy sight, thinking and envisioning this short little dwarf that they're envisioning getting pulled around with this grappling hook, but once they read the rules, they're like, oh snap, that's how it actually works. The most recent example of that in my games is when I was playing with my girlfriend a few sessions ago. She did a one-shot. And one of our other players, who is a DM himself, so we all three are DMs, said, hey, if you're attacking from a diagonal on a 5 feet grid, that's 10 feet away. So him running his games all this time, anytime you attack from a diagonal, that's a 10 foot away from each other. But in reality, unless you're playing with the optional rules that's available in Dungeons and Dragons, it's actually just 5 feet. Now, of course, the proper way to handle this is to ask the current DM, which was my girlfriend, what her ruling on the situation was, and she kept it the normal 5 feet. But it was just funny to know even longtime DMs can be playing with the rules so long that they think it's the official rule, when in reality, no, that's just something somebody eventually told you and you thought it was law. So let's get into the comments of this Reddit post and see what other people had to say. Let's get into the top comments for this post and talk about some interesting things that I learned personally here. This one, the top comment coming from Arch I Will. You can cast mage armor on other people. This blew my mind. As a longtime DM, more than I even get to be a player, this kind of surprised me. I did not know you could cast mage armor on other things. I've never had it come up in any of my games. I've never had a player do it, but this gives me a lot of little funny things coming up, because in my home game right now, my girlfriend, who's playing this this like Final Fantasy Reaper type character, who's this barbarian, she ran out there and got herself a little piglet that could potentially become a pet, and she's a little worried about bringing it around. Maybe casting mage armor on this pet would be a great little idea from one of the casters in the party. So that's good to know. Protect some of your familiars or those lower AC creatures with mage armor. Awesome information right there coming from Arch Willie. Let's keep on going down into this post and see what else is up ahead. I had never had a reason to look at the underwater combat of the Dungeons Master Guide until recently. 5e has no discernible penalties for wearing heavy armor and swimming. And they're right. I never looked at it either, but yeah, go ahead. Head into the water with some heavy armor. May not be the smartest thing to do if you think about it from the realistic world, but this is a fantasy game. And if that's how the rule is, no penalty for heavy armor, so what? Next one comes from Nazari North. For me, it was the range attacks have disadvantage as long as any foe is within 5 feet of you. For the longest time, I thought you only had disadvantage if the target you were shooting was within 5 feet of you. And here's me being a truthful DM, I thought it was the same thing. I never knew that it just had to be any creature within you harassing you, but I just thought it was the person you're going to attack had to be far next to you to get disadvantage. I'm not sure how I'm going to rule this going forward in my games. This hasn't come up yet, but maybe I should start following the official rules for this because I've basically been doing this wrong forever. And I've never had any other DM call me out on it either as a player, but I have been a player. Very few compared to how much I've been a DM. Let's read one more and then go from there. The Jack of all trades applies to initiative roll. It makes sense now that you think about it. Rolling initiative is just a dexterity check. Yes, initiative is an ability check, so you can have things that add to your initiative. It's just like how death saves are a saving throw. So a paladin who has an aura that is your friend can boost up your death saves because it is a saving throw. So cool little facts right there, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back with more D&D product reviews and videos coming soon. Check out my D&D stuff along with my video game stuff on the channel. Links and playlists in the description. Later.